PD 3352.
We don't match in size, but we fit so neatly.
Hi, that's me. No, not the green one. I'm Sean Marshall, and I played Pete when I was a kid many years ago. When we were making Pete's Dragon, Elliot wasn't there. He was invisible, and I could only see him in my imagination.
You sure changed my life.
The magic of Disney's artists brought Elliot to life so you could see him too. They used a special effects technique perfected at Disney Studios known as the sodium screen process. In today's digital age of computers, it's much easier than it used to be. You may even have heard of the terms blue screen or green screen. It's like this. Someone is photographed against a very specially lit green background. Later, computer programs eliminate all the green and leave just the person. Then that image can be combined with any kind of background. You see it all the time in movies, even TV news, where animation or people are combined with different settings or objects.
'Cause it's not easy to find someone who cares.
It's not easy to find magic in pairs.
Before computers, combining animation with live action was not easy, so I'm going to let you in on the secret of that process and how Disney Studios spent decades getting so good at it. This story starts way back in the 1920s, when Walt Disney first started making movies. From the very beginning, Walt Disney experimented with special effects and camera tricks, trying to become a successful filmmaker. He started making simple cartoons and ended up making magical movies that are still loved around the world. Listen to Walt Disney describe those early days.
Well, I was desperately trying to get something that would get a hold, could catch on. So I was thinking if I had something with a novel twist. They had the cartoons working with the humans, which was originated by Max Fleischer. So I thought of the reversal on that. I'll put the humans in with the cartoons instead of being paralleling the other cartoons we made, and I might crack the market. I took a real person and put them into the drawing.
To put it in simple terms, they photographed the live actors in front of a white sheet. Then the film could run through the camera a second time to shoot the animation, combining the two images in a double exposure. Sometimes for closer interaction between the characters, they would make still pictures from each frame of the live-action film. That way, they knew where to draw the animation in relation to the live film. Then the animation camera would shoot the drawings with the photographs. Later, you'll see how that same idea was used for Pete's Dragon.
So I made this first one called Alice in Cartoonland. And I found a little girl that had been posing for some of the commercial things at this place.
The girl was Virginia Davis, Walt Disney's first star.
I remember Walt Disney, and I remember what a nice man he was. You know, a little 4-year-old looking up at this tall man, and he would tell me so many nice stories, and then we'd act them out. And of course, being silent, he could gesture and tell me what to do as we were going along on the storyline, because the animation was apart from the acting. It was pantomime. Walt would tell me what to do. He'd say, look behind you, a bear's coming. Look frightened. And then I'd have to look frightened. And every little movement was that way. But it was a pretend story. And you know, children love to pretend. And I loved to pretend too.
One of the men who would be most important to the technical developments at Disney Studio was lifelong associate Ub Iwerks. In addition to being a skilled and amazingly fast animator, Ub was already helping solve technical problems at the new studio. For instance, he modified the animation camera for a more consistent light exposure of each frame. But his biggest contribution in those days was helping Walt develop a new character, Mickey Mouse. It was in 1928 that Walt Disney made his first real breakthrough with the help of Ub Iwerks. Ub animated 2 silent Mickey Mouse cartoons, Plain Crazy and Gallopin' Gaucho. But, amazingly, they did not generate much interest, and no distributor would release them. It was technical innovation that once again came to Walt's rescue. A third Mickey Mouse cartoon, Steamboat Willie, was given a completely synchronized soundtrack for the first time in cartoon history. It was a blockbuster hit. Engaging personalities like Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse, combined with the skillful use of music, sound effects, and voices, soon became hallmarks of Disney animated films. In 1932 came Flowers and Trees, the first full-color cartoon. The drawing talents of Disney artists advanced so rapidly that in 1937, the world was given the first full-length animated film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It was the most successful movie ever made up to that time. During this time in the 1930s, Iwerks had actually gone out on his own, but in 1940, he came back to the Disney studios, where he remained for the rest of his career.
I have to say that when I knew I would never have imagined him as an animator. Now, this is when I knew as the guy who ran the process lab and as essentially a technician as opposed to the who animated Mickey Mouse at a furious rate for many, many years and a lot of other characters.
Instead of animating, enjoyed his time working on technical problems. In 1945, that included developing new ways to mix live action with animation.
Walt Disney actually combines for the first time on the screen cartoon with flesh and blood personalities.
Well, the first time in color, that is. You know how movie advertising likes to exaggerate. But it was never done so well before. The Three Caballeros was a dazzling festival of music and color in a celebration of Latin and South American cultures. During the artist's research trip, even Walt Disney himself got into the spirit.
We developed this little Brazilian parrot, Jose Carioca, who played with Donald Duck.
Animated characters were put into live-action scenes. And humans were put into cartoon worlds. The effects were created in two ways. One method was basically a standard movie practice of rear screen projection. Actors perform in front of a movie screen, projected from behind, so that the camera sees two images together. Here's a rare behind-the-scenes look at how it was done. That's the dancer on stage in front of a rear projection of the animation. When animated stars were in the foreground, it was essentially the same principle. In those days, animators' drawings were transferred onto clear cells painted by hand so that the camera could see behind them. They worked out a system where the live action was projected onto a mirror and reflected underneath the cells, then shot from above one frame at a time by the animation camera. The other method was even more complicated, using a cool new process Iwerks was experimenting with. The performer was photographed against a special color background. It allowed the film to subtract out the background color, leaving just the actor who could be placed anywhere. Developed the Disney Special Process Lab, where film elements would be rephotographed onto a new negative to combine special images in magical ways.
What he did in the process lab was so highly technologically oriented, and he was enormously creative with the technology. He could do things that were just wizard things with the machinery of film. You know, the optical printers that would add animation to live action, say, or any number of other things that made our lives as filmmakers easier.